Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first week of public speaking. This is my first mini lecture for the first chapter, and I title it as Getting Started from A to Z, History of Public Speaking and Overview of a Speech. So the goal of this mini lecture is to provide you with the basic understanding of not only a communication process, but also what it takes to become a good public speaker. All right, let's start from the beginning. Um, I want you to understand about the classical roots of public speaking. Public speaking used to be called as rhetoric, also called as oratory, and it flourished in the Greek city-states of Athens in the 5th century before Common Era. So the core of public speaking at the time is persuasive speech, and you will see that in this course as well, that persuasive speech actually has the most weight of all the speeches that you're going to deliver in this semester. Now, go back to the Greek city-state Athens. At the time, Athens was the site of the world's first direct democracy. So this is a place where people would gather and discuss issues that are important for their livelihood and for their city. So the citizens, as I wrote there, would gather in a public square, which is called agora, to have meetings and to discuss issues on public policy. And during Roman Republic period, a public square is called forum. And if you notice, even that word forum is still is used nowadays, especially when you access discussion on the internet, you usually see it as a discussion forum. And then if you read your book, then you will see that a teacher of public speaking that was prominent was Gorgias, and he was a sophist. He delivered a famous speech about Helen of Troy, and he stated that speech is a powerful lord. It can cause the defiance works, and it can stop fear and banish griefs and nurture pity. He compared it to an irresistible passion or intoxication. And he also compares the power of persuasive speaking to spell binding and witchcraft. Isn't it fascinating how powerful he thinks public speaking is? And the great classical rhetorician, which is Aristotle, and later the Roman statesman and orator Cicero, divided the process of preparing a speech into five parts, which are inventions, arrangements, style, memory, and delivery. These five process is called five canons of rhetoric. And I want you to understand this because I'm going to ask this not only in your first quiz, but I'm also going to ask this in your midterm exam. So make sure you understand what canons of rhetoric is. I'm going to discuss this one by one, so please pay close attention. When we're thinking about, or when we're thinking about the concept of invention, invention means the speaker creates idea or the invention of ideas and adapts the ideas or the speech information to the audience in order to make a case. So when we think about what invention is, it's basically the creation of ideas and adapting it based on who the audience is. Yeah. The next one is arrangements, which is all about organizations. So the speaker organizes the speech in ways best suited to the topic as well as to the audience. The next one is style, which is the way the speaker uses language to express the speech ideas. So it has everything to do with how she or he crafts a sentence, choosing words, and arranging them to get her or his points across effectively. So when we're thinking about style, I want you to think about words choice and how a speaker would craft the speech so that it is suited to the goal of the speech. Yeah, and everybody has their own styles. And then the next one is memory. I want you to understand that when we're thinking about memory, it's not simply memorizing the text of the speech, but also understanding the nuances of the speech and practicing it until it can be artfully delivered. Yeah. So memory is not only about memorizing the speech, but also having a good knowledge, good understanding, and practicing it so that it becomes very fluent. And last but not least is delivery, which is the vocal and nonverbal behavior you use when speaking. So when you're thinking about delivery, you're thinking about hand gestures, you're thinking about facial expressions, you're thinking about eye contacts, and you're thinking about tone, pitch, body language, etc. So all of these components make that 5 canons of rhetoric. So, when we're thinking about learning to speak in public, we understand that we draw on conversational skills, we draw on skills in compositions because you're going to write your speech first. So, it's very similar to your English composition because you're going to make sure that you organize everything and you basically have a good structure of your speech. And that you also develop an effective oral style. Yeah, everybody usually mimics speakers that they admire first before they start developing their own effective oral style. And then it's very important that when you're speaking in front of public, you want to become an inclusive speaker. You don't want to alienate your audience. You want to make sure that when you're talking that you are being inclusive and you make all of your audience feels like they're included in that conversation, in that public speaking. And public speaking as a form of communication, basically, public speaking is just one of 4 categories of human communication. The first one, the type of human communication, is what we call as dyadic communication. So dyad means two, and it happens between 2 people, what we call as conversation. The next one is the small group communication, which involves a small number of people who can see and speak directly with one another. And then we have mass communication, which occurs between a speaker and a large audience of unknown people who usually are not present with the speaker. So what we need to understand here is mass communication is usually there is this one group of people who will communicate the message to the mass. So if we're thinking about radio, if we're thinking about television, those are examples of mass communications, yeah, where the speaker and the large audience are not sitting together in the same room, but instead there is this media that mediated the channel of the communications. That's why we call it mass communication, from one to the mass. And then there's also public speaking, which always involves a speaker and an audience who together are present during the delivery of the speech. Yeah. So when everyone is in the same room, then we call that as public speaking. And then here we have the interactive communication process, because in any communication event, including public speaking, these key elements of communication are always present. There's always the source or sender. If you're the speaker, then you're the source or the sender. If you're in the audience, then you're the receiver. And then the message is basically the message that you deliver to your audience. And then you have the channel. Yeah. In this case, the channel can be the air that carries the sound. And then there is shared meaning, which is basically what you aim to achieve. That what you're trying to deliver, the message you're trying to deliver, is received, and then you achieve that shared meaning. Other elements of communications includes encoding, decoding, feedback, noise, and context. And I do encourage you to read the first chapter of your textbook so that you get more information about this. What does encoding mean? What does decoding mean? You'll understand that. And then the next one is when preparing for a speech, these are the steps that you need to keep in mind. You need to analyze the audience, yeah, and we will talk about it further in my next mini lecture, because what I want you to understand is that public speaking is all about understanding who your audience is. Because you do not want to be selfish when you're creating a message. Just because a topic is important and significant for you does not mean that the same idea or the same topic is interesting and significant for your audience. So it's very important for you to find out how you can bridge that gap between your message and the audience. That is why, if you take a look at the illustration that I provide at the beginning of the Welcome to Week 1 module, is the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon, how his dad was able to craft a message so that Calvin can understand why he needs to eat the food that is sitting in front of him. And this ability to understand your audience is key. Yeah, it's very important. And then you need to be able to select a topic, review the topic in light of audience analysis, determine the speech purpose. You need to be able to compose a thesis statement and develop the main points, gather supporting materials, separates the speech into each major parts, the introduction, the body, the conclusion. Remember when I say it's like English composition? Because yes, in a speech, you also have to have clear organization, and you have to have the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. And then you need to be able to outline the speech, include coordination and subordination, and then consider presentation aids, just like what I'm doing right now, as well as practice delivering the speech. So in general, these are all the history and the elements of public speaking that I want you to take away from watching this mini lecture. Thanks, everyone.